Let's see. There we go.
We
Hello,
are live.
everyone. We're live. Yes, yes, yes. For live on all the platforms, and in about 30 seconds, we'll be live on Instagram. There we go. So, welcome, everyone. This is Dr. Cody Goldman, and this is Dr. Tiff. Say hello.
Hey. I'm like
Yeah,
out of rhythm here. It's been like 3 weeks. I'm like, forgot how to
yeah,
do this thing.
yeah. We hadn't been on in a little bit just because of busyness of everything going on in our lives. So, if you guys haven't seen us, we probably, I don't know, maybe 2-3 months ago, decided just to start going live. And we both have experience as doctors in both health and nutrition, and had very similar mindsets. And we thought, let's come on and actually like give useful information to people. And me personally, I spent 17 years as a chiropractor, and one of the big things I noticed was, in general, what a lot of medical doctors were telling their patients to do was like the wrong thing. Now, I'm not saying medicine is wrong, medical doctors are wrong. I'm telling you, my experience was that most medical doctors were trained on disease, not on health. And that's cool. That's cool. If I want to understand disease, I go to a medical doctor. If I want to understand health, I'd go to a health doctor. And so that's what both Dr. Tiff and I are. And so we thought, coming out and putting some of these topics, that these are not popularized. We don't spend $7 to $10 million a month educating you on drugs, right? Part of what we get to really talk to you about is what truly happens with the body, the power of the body. So today's topic is intermittent fasting. And the question is it effective for women over 40? Now, I'm probably isolating the guys, and I want to be upfront and say why I do that. Because for the most part, after I don't know how many tens of thousands of people I've worked with, women tend to take action on their health before men. There are exceptions, but I really focus on working with women because they tend to take action on health before men. So that's why we're going to focus, and we can talk about men too. But so intermittent fasting, is it effective for women over 40? This is a really big topic.
Yeah.
It's a charged topic, and it's also a little bit of in the fad territory. But I want to just first open it up to you, Dr. Tiff. What are your thoughts on this? First comments.
I think intermittent fasting works if you're in a calorie deficit. Because it doesn't matter what approach you're taking. If you're trying to lose fat, you have to be in a calorie deficit. So yes, if you're fasting and it helps you control caloric intake by shortening your feeding window and eliminating the potential of overeating calories because you've gotten yourself a little bit more structured window of consumption, then I think you'll lose body fat. But if you fast and then overconsume in your feeding window, it's like anything else. It's not going to work because you're overshooting your caloric needs for the day. So I think that people think the fasting is what's causing the fat loss. But in most cases, it's because the fasting is helping you better control your calorie intake. And so you end up losing body fat. That's my experience with it.
Good. So let's start there. So yeah, that's a good place to start. So let's talk about calorie deficit. What I see, first of all, is most people doing is under eating and over exercising. And so what the majority of people have not figured out what that actually even means, calorie deficit. It's very easy to create a calorie deficit, but most people I've seen, and most women I work with, have been in a major calorie deficit, which works the opposite, where they end up burning muscle, not fat, right? So what's the appropriate calorie deficit so people know?
Yeah, well, I mean, for my clients, I try to find a moderate deficit. So that's usually about 400-500 calories off of their total daily energy expenditure. And in my experience, there are some extra variables post 40 of hormones and history of dieting and all the things that we have to consider, right? But I think just intermittent fasting on its own, again, if you're not playing with hormones, if you're not dealing with history of yo-yo dieting, if you're not dealing with the potential impacts of loss of muscle mass, like I do think that most women over 40 still may be eating more than they need to be eating or underreporting what they're eating. I think in many cases we're not accurately assessing how much we're eating, or we could just be eating in the wrong macronutrient balance, right? Overeating fats or overeating carbs, undereating protein. So I think too, it kind of comes down to the balance of your macros. But for the majority of my clients, when they come in, they think they're eating a lot less than they're eating.
Yes. So, okay, that's good. So that's interesting because we've seen this. We almost have the polarity of this one. Your clients are eating less than they think they're eating, or is that right, or more?
Yes. Well, I mean, like they'll come in and say, I'm eating like 1,200, 1,300 calories a day and I'm not losing. But then when we really dive in and they start tracking with my eyes on it and we start measuring and weighing and really getting into the details, they're like, oh, maybe I'm eating more than I thought I was eating. Yeah. Or they're eating out a lot and they're kind of guessing. So as they start meal prepping and really looking at the content, controlling the content, right? Yep. Because when we eat out, and even if we make the best choice we think we can on a menu, there's just so many hidden calories. So a lot of people, in my experience, they think they're eating clean. They think they're eating minimally, but when we really get down to the details, they're consuming more, not intentionally underreporting. They just are inaccurately tracking things.
Yeah. And we really probably should say when it comes to this is under eating enough of the right stuff, maybe overeating the wrong stuff. Right.
Correct.
So I'll introduce something here that, and this is where my expertise comes in is, I spent years playing around with calorie deficits and trying to work out and do all the things with people. And so I want to mention this to people. You have two hormones called leptin and ghrelin, and leptin and ghrelin are responsible for many things, but one of the things they're responsible for is when you're hungry and you're full. And also whether or not your body primarily has switched over to sugar or fat. And this is one of the secrets I found, didn't read in a book, didn't see it in any research or studies. But when people come to me, what I find mostly, I have people who are fasting, and I'll tell you what I've seen with how people are fasting right? What I've seen is that fasting is causing fat people. And I want to make sure I explain this. Because when people come to me and they say, Dr. Goldman, I'm 30 pounds overweight. Okay, what are you doing? Fasting. I love it. And they go, how much weight have you lost? Well, I lost 10 pounds. Then I gained back 15. And over the course of time, what their fasting is starving themselves, which triggers the anti-starvation mechanism in the brain. So they're not actually doing it correctly, like you're saying. Mm-hmm. And what it's doing is it's actually triggering the part of your brain that when you undereat too much, and you overwork out or overstress, your brain will literally trigger fat storage. And what happens is each time someone does this, it becomes harder and harder to lose weight. So it's one of the things I want to point out here is when I talk about hormones, of course, hormones change as a woman, 35 to 55, there's a shift in there. But there's something that is not due to age. And it is this shift of if you have increased stress and increased sugar or simple carbohydrate consumption, you can literally shift your body away from utilizing fat as a fuel source. And that's what I noticed, and I want to say this to people, is if you are a sugar burner, your fasting is going to be very ineffective until you switch your body back over to burning fat as a fuel source. And that's one of the things that has not been talked about in most of our healthcare system, because that requires a lot of work. You got it takes a lot of work to shift your hormones back, right? And I've seen it happen as a kid. If you give kids enough sugar and enough stress, they will stop using fat and you will watch their bodies just blow up. So that's what I noticed around 35, 45 is.
Yeah. Well, and I think that you can, your body's going to use what's most readily available, right? So if you are, to your point, over consuming carbohydrate, specifically refined carbohydrate, chronically, and maybe you're the old school low fat mindset, like, oh, I'm not eating everything low fat, but I'm eating all these carbs, then your body's going to shift into using that for fuel, to your point. And we see in ketosis or a ketogenic diet, when fat is readily available and carbs are not, then your body's going to shift to adapting to fat utilization. So I do think, like, depending on how you feed it, your body is so intelligent. It's going to shift to use whatever fuel you're giving it, and protein just isn't a fuel source. So that's never really an option unless there's, you know, a lot of other variables at play where we're turning amino acids into glucose, but that doesn't happen very often. So fat and carbs are going to be, one of those is going to be our preferred fuel source. And that's why in a lot of research, we see that a low carb, high fat diet can be effective, and a high carb, low fat diet can be effective, right? Because your body's just going to prioritize what's more readily available, and it's going to burn the fuel regardless. But over time and chronically, if there's other things at play, then yeah, to your point, then we get in a little trouble of just calorie storage, energy storage, which can be in the form of fat.
Yeah. So you could say if you are actually a fat burner, in other words, your hormones are used to using fat as a fuel source, proper fasting, we use a proper type of fasting, but proper fasting does wonders. But I want to just make this note. What I'm seeing the trend be for most people is that many people will say they're fasting, but all they're doing is skipping a meal for convenience. Okay, so I hear people go, "Hey, it's just, you know what? I'm fasting in the morning." Why? Because it's just easier not to cook. You're just skipping a meal for convenience. Are you really planning fasting? Because when you fast, you like you're saying, you've got to really calculate what are the things you're actually eating. So you can't fast and then go suck on some, you know, sugar pops and like that's, you know what I mean? So the underutilization or under eating of actually enough proteins, fats, and carbohydrates is a big deal. So I think that's really huge. Just kind of look at it from that angle is if you are burning fat, fasting's fantastic. But what I noticed is if your body has switched over to sugar and your body's leaving fat on, if you fast, you could fast for 30 days, you'll lose very little fat. Your body may not be using fat as a fuel source anymore.
Yeah. And I think, again, the other thing I see is just being really strategic about your feeding window, because as we've talked about and as we're seeing everywhere is the maintaining of muscle, making sure you're not losing muscle as we get older or through under eating and overtraining. And if you are training during your fasting window, then you're putting your muscle even more at risk for breakdown, right? So if you're somebody that likes to train at 6 a.m., 8 a.m., and you're skipping breakfast and not eating till noon, not only are you coming off of a 12, 14-hour fast through the evening, you're then training and getting more breakdown and not putting any protein or calories in to offset the breakdown. So make sure you're not fasting during your training time, I think is huge, especially post 40. I mean, really at any point, but since we're talking post 40, I mean, we don't want to do anything that's going to promote even more muscle breakdown.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think it's important when we have this conversation that we talk about ancestrally what the way your actual brain is wired, because we didn't have regular food. You know, 25,000 years ago, we would kill something, get forage, and eat, and then we might go a while without food. So that's what people go, "Oh, fasting's great." But I want to just say this because that's great if you're an animal, but as a human, we've evolved. So you would use it specifically. So we're not going to be using fasting as like, and that's the justification some people have. You got to understand that when you ate something at 25,000 years ago, and then you were like go 2 or 3 days without food, your brain stored fat for survival. So that's actually a training. So if you guys do that regularly, you're literally training your body. And most of the women I work with have trained their body to store fat. So they'll eat a bunch, then starve it, right? When I say starve it, I'm talking about they starve with paleo, keto, the way it's being done at least, fasting, you know, done the way most people are doing it, and they end up starving it. And so body goes, okay, the moment I get food, I'm going to pile this fat back on. So one of the words I really love that's not really ever talked about is caloric balance. And most people don't even understand what their caloric balance is. Meaning, I know if I'm just going to be in the computer and working, I know what my caloric balance is, what caloric intake is for that day. If I go for a mountain bike ride, I know how much more I'm going to eat. And I know Dr. Tiff measures these things. We most of my patients, we do intuitively. You call it intuitive eating.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I have people intuitively feel into it. So we weigh our food at first, so you can visually see how much you need. So I know whether or not I need 8 ounces or 9 ounces with a mountain bike ride of lean meats, veggies, and fruits, or a complex carb, right? So I know that. So one of the biggest things you can do is figure out what is your caloric balance. You can do it like Dr. Tiff said with, you can start really getting down with counting your calories, or you can really start listening to your body and use the scale and weigh your food. So you go, when I ride my bike, I need 8 ounces of this or 10 ounces of this. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're just reverse, or it's almost reverse order. Like, this is what I feel like I'm going to eat because I'm the hunger level is here, and I'm going to see how much that actually is. And then I know what I have consumed on a day where I've exercised more intensively. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we with what we do with our patients for 40 days, we always start with a certain amount of ounces of lean meats, veggies, and fruits. And again, there's a lot of science behind this, but that's not going to work if your body is burning sugar, because when your body's burning sugar, you can't tell when you're truly hungry. That's the truth. When you burn fat, your hunger mechanism is fantastic. So again, I want to preface this: if you're a fat burner, you can do this. You can actually eat a certain amount of ounces. Start with 4 ounces of lean meats, veggies, and fruits, and see if you're hungry. If you're hungry, you go, cool. Let me go to 5. We keep it very, very simple with it. I keep things simple just because when it's complex, it makes it very hard to maintain longevity with, so yeah. But taking time to actually learn about the calories for a little bit of period of time, I found also to be very helpful long term, so that's huge.
Yeah, and I think too, it's like the sustainability of fasting, I think, is difficult as well. And I'm never a proponent of something that I don't feel like is a long-term process. I even say this to my clients all the time. I say, if I ask you to do something during our 12 weeks together and it doesn't feel sustainable, or it feels like I'm asking you to step outside of your normal intuitive lifestyle preferences, then we shouldn't even do it, because I want you to do things and acclimate to things and adjust and modify that still feels like, I could live like this. I could do this forever.
Yeah.
Because people say, well, I'm just going to cut alcohol. I'm just going to cut all desserts. I'm just never going to eat X, Y, Z. And I said, but is that the life you want to have long term? If you're ready to give that up and that just isn't serving you anymore, and you're like, I'm done with this, let's move forward, I'm all about it. But if you're like, well, I could do that for 12 weeks, but then I'm going to definitely want to have a glass of wine on the patio with my husband on a Friday night, then we're creating habits that aren't sustainable. So I think I would say the same thing just about a fasting process or whatever approach you decide to take to get results for yourself. Is this something I want to keep doing forever? Because I do think once you start it and then you try to cycle yourself off of it, that's often when you see that rebound. It's like it works until it doesn't,
Yeah. What I love to tell my patients is, so I have, as a man coaching women, I have simplified things as much as I can, not because women need it simple, because I need it simple. And so I've got it down to the most simple thing possible. And therefore that's the baseline, right? So it's like, we eat on time. We don't miss meals. And that is very uncomfortable for people until they realize, oh my God, I need to eat on time. We need to eat enough of the right thing, right? So we have certain basic things that I won't compromise on because, I care about people. And it's interesting when you really dial in those things. I've noticed that complexity is the enemy of longevity. And I don't know if that's a quote I've heard somewhere, but it truly is the case. If something's complex, or if you don't really understand it, it's not going to last. So to keep it simple, stupid, maybe keep it simple, Sally. Maybe that's nicer.
Or just consistency, and to your point, I think those go hand in hand. If it's too complicated, you can't be consistent with it. So it needs to be simple. It needs to be sustainable. It needs to be consistent, and again, it's everybody's life is different, and everybody has different bandwidth to eat on a schedule, to manage their macros, to be more intuitive, whatever it is you're asking them to do. Yeah. But I think that's why that's the cool part of having different approaches to this process, is that you do just have to find the coach or the program or the process or whatever that works for you. And, I'm the first person to tell a client, like, hey, if tracking your food every day for 12 weeks is not what you want to do, this is not the process for you. But you'll learn more about your body and what is in food and the awareness and the hunger and the fullness and the training intensity. Like, you'll learn so much about that you'll never forget. Once you weigh something, you're never going to not see it again, and I think you do the same thing. So I do think that going into the details initially with any program and really understanding and creating an education is a foundation for being able to sustain whatever approach you end up taking.
Yeah, when we my patients known me for, we have a course called the Fast 40, and it's 5 to 10 minute videos. And over the last 17 years, I basically watched people do things incorrectly, and I'd shoot a video to make sure they knew how to do it the right way. So we've got, it's about 78 videos over the course of 60 days. I'll go, hey, watch these on day 1, on day 5, on day 10, and in bite-sized piece of information. I say that because there's a certain gradient that I think having the right coach. In my clinic, I used to sell isogenics, and if you remember isogenics, I'm just gonna be really straight up. What a terrible thing to do to your digestive system. It was primarily shakes, and oh my God, I destroyed my digestive system and my patients when I was doing it. And I didn't know anything about weight loss. This is more like, we're talking 15 years ago I was doing this. Now I'm going, oh my gosh, like, you really, I'm saying this because the stuff for you guys listening, the stuff that you're hearing on the media to the way to lose weight, I'm telling you, it is absolutely terrible for you. And I can list those things off. Ozempic, Wegovy are diabetic medications. Yes, you're going to lose fat and weight. You might lose muscle, but we're seeing long-term effects. Osteoporosis is showing up because you're malnourishing yourself. I'm not against these things. It's just, you really want to have a coach to walk you through this. The weight loss industry is a $1 billion industry. That is, the whole basis of it is that people don't ever truly lose weight, so it can keep being a $1 billion industry. So just want to say that to people.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason Weight Watchers has a lifetime membership, right?
Isn't that a funny thing? I never thought about that. Good point. That's a really great point. Why the F would you need a lifetime membership to something?
I would say, if I get repeat customers, I have not done my job. It's not a great business model, but it's just true. I mean, I don't want people to have to need me forever. I haven't done my job. I mean, I want to give them tools. I want to give them education. I want to be able to see them do it on their own. But yeah, I don't want people coming back every year for sure.
Well, you could also say it's along the same lines. I used to ask my patients, one of the things I love training my patients to do is ask their doctor questions, because most people don't. So you got high blood pressure and you go, oh, cool, you need blood pressure pills. So I would train my patients, say, cool, great, thanks for the advice. Here's the question you ask the doctor. How long do I need to take, or how many blood pressure pills will I need to take until my blood pressure is fixed? That's the question to ask your doctor.
That's right.
And it's important you ask your doctor, because the answer will be, it's never fixed. You take it forever. So the next question is to be, well, is there anything I can do to fix my blood pressure? Because if you're going to advise me to do something to temporarily relieve it for the next 50 years with side effects, is there something you could advise me on to actually help, fix it? And so I love asking that question. How much arthritis medication should you take before your arthritis is fixed? It's never fixed. It's all there to relieve your symptoms. And so really, one of the reasons I appreciate you, Dr. Schiff, is because we both seem aligned with, let's help you actually truly figure out what's going on with your body, help you understand your body, so you're not at the detriment of being on bags of medication by the time you're 50, 60, or 70 and living in a nursing home. That is really our purpose here.
That's right. I mean, a lot of people say this, they call, instead of healthcare, sick care, and I feel the same way about disease management versus disease prevention. Why do we want to manage a disease? Don't we
There
want
you
to
go.
prevent the disease? Like the goal is not to manage it. It's already a problem at that point, but can we be preventive about it? Can we be proactive about it?
Well,
So
let's just be real and honest with everyone here. Disease management is what makes money. So that's why. So if you run a business, if you're a healthcare company, insurance company, medicine, you don't want to invent stuff that's going to fix something that's bullshit. I think most people this. I think most people this. I saw this interesting thing happen as a chiropractor in my 20s. I watched, people in their 70s and 80s believe everything they saw on TV, and then I saw people, 60s and 50s kind of going, I believe TV and media and doctors. But then it got down to 40s and 30s, and people started going, I don't know if I believe that. Now people in their 20s are like, we know it's all
mhm.
pharma, TV, oil plugs, right? We know it's bullshit. So it's just quite wild to see that what you're really being told, right? And that's a great point. Is do you want to manage? I think Weight Watchers is a good weight management system. You're going to manage your weight. Do you want to manage your blood pressure? You're gonna manage your disease the rest of your life, or do you want to dive in? Now, let's be honest. Isn't it harder to dive in and really fix a problem? That's a lot of work. Isn't it? Isn't it easier to inject yourself, to pill yourself up, to do? Isn't it just easier? Let me just starve myself and do Weight Watchers every so often. It seems easier, and in the short run, it is. But in the long run, I've seen it not be easier. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think nobody wants to be uncomfortable. Nobody wants to invest in hard. Nobody wants to struggle or sacrifice. I mean, that's human nature. But I think if we look at historically the people that have thrived, the people that have risen above, the people that have overcome, there's a struggle. There's always a struggle before the perseverance, before the sacrifice leads to success, and so I think if you look at any story of somebody in history, even the Bible or whatever books you want to read, it's like there's a struggle that leads to the overcoming and on the other side of that. So I just think it's a hard sell, but it's the way to grow and the way to get stronger.
definitely. Well, I know we're just about out of time. I'm going to say thanks
Yeah.
everyone for being here. We had a ton of comments, and I kind of weaved in some of your guys' questions that you asked. I weaved them in here. Thanks for anything you guys might be watching this after we actually do it live. We look at these. Please put comments in there. We'll if you have a topic or something you want us to chat about, we'll do it. So
Yeah, for sure.
thanks for being on here, Dr. Tiff.
Yeah.
Appreciate you. We're going to see you, I guess, next week.
Sounds good. See you, Doc.
All right, guys. We'll